The radar screen flickered in the pre-dawn darkness of Nelly's Air Force Base, casting ghostly green shadows across Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Viper Henderson's weathered face. What he saw defied explanation: a single aircraft executing perfect figure-eight patterns at 28,000 feet, 30 miles northeast of Las Vegas. No flight plan, no radio contact, no transponder code. Control, this is Viper 11. I'm showing an unknown aircraft in restricted airspace, Sector 7 Alpha. Request immediate identification. Static crackled through his headset before the tower responded. Viper 11, we show negative radar contact in your sector. Please verify your position. Henderson's grip tightened on the stick of his F-22 Raptor. 23 years of flying fighters had taught him to trust his instruments, even when ground control couldn't see what he saw. The ghost aircraft maintained its methodical pattern: 8 precise loops, then a pause, then 8 more, like a signature written in sky. Viper 12, do you have visual on unknown aircraft, bearing 047? His wingman's voice carried skepticism. Negative, Viper lead. I'm not painting anything up there. But Henderson could see it, a sleek silhouette catching the first rays of dawn, wings cutting through morning mist with surgical precision. The aircraft moved like it was dancing, each maneuver calculated yet somehow desperate. Something about those loops triggered a memory buried deep in his tactical training, something he couldn't quite grasp. The radio crackled again. All units, this is Nevada Control. We have reports of a missing civilian aircraft, tail number November 77 Delta Whiskey. Last known position approximately 30 miles northeast of Vegas. If you have any visual contact, please advise immediately. Henderson's blood ran cold. N77DW. He knew that registration number. Every pilot in the Air Force knew it, though most had forgotten the story behind it. His father had told him about it over bourbon and war stories, back when Henderson was just a kid dreaming of flight school. That tail number belonged to a legend, one that supposedly died in flames over Afghanistan 15 years ago. The ghost aircraft banked into another perfect figure-eight, morning sunlight revealing its true identity. It wasn't civilian. It wasn't military. It was something that shouldn't exist anymore, piloted by someone who should have been dead for over a decade. Henderson's hands trembled as he reached for his radio, knowing that what he was about to report would change everything they thought they knew about one of the Air Force's greatest mysteries. Above them, the loops continued with mechanical precision, each one a desperate message written in contrails against the Nevada sky. Someone was trying to tell them something. Someone who had been presumed dead was very much alive. 28,000 feet above the Mojave Desert, Captain Zara, Phoenix, Thorne fought against muscle memory and 15 years of ghosts. Her stolen F-16 Fighting Falcon responded to every input with familiar precision, but her body screamed from injuries that had never properly healed. The figure-eight pattern she flew wasn't random. It was the international rescue signal, repeated endlessly in the hope that someone below might remember what it meant. The irony wasn't lost on her. Phoenix, the call sign she'd earned for rising from the ashes of her first combat mission, now flying literal circles in the sky while the world below believed her dead. The ejection seat behind her felt like a tombstone, a reminder of how close she'd come to joining the statistics of the Afghanistan war. Her fuel gauge showed 20 minutes remaining. 20 minutes to complete a mission that had taken 15 years to orchestrate. The data card tucked inside her flight suit contained enough classified information to reshape American foreign policy, proof of a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of military command. Evidence of the war crimes that had forced her to fake her own death and disappear into the shadows of the intelligence community. Below, she could see the contrails of approaching fighters. F-22 Raptors, their stealth signatures barely visible against the morning sky. They would assume she was hostile, another unknown aircraft to be identified and neutralized. They had no way of knowing that the woman in their crosshairs had once been their instructor, the pilot who had trained half the Raptor squadron leaders currently serving in the Pacific Theater. Unknown aircraft, this is Viper 11. You are in violation of restricted airspace. Identify yourself immediately or you will be fired upon. Phoenix's hand hovered over her radio. Speaking would confirm her identity, but it would also paint a target on everyone she'd worked with during her years in exile. The resistance cell that had helped her survive in the mountains of Pakistan. The journalists who had risked their lives to document the atrocities she'd witnessed. The families of the pilots who had died because of the conspiracy she was about to expose. She banked into another figure eight, buying time to consider her options. The morning sun caught the scratched canopy of her fighter, sending fractured rainbows across her instrument panel. How many times had she flown this same pattern during survival training, teaching young pilots the international signal for distress? How many times had she emphasized that this simple maneuver could mean the difference between rescue and death? Now she was the one in distress, carrying secrets that could save lives or destroy careers. The choice of whether to break radio silence weighed heavier than any ordnance she'd ever carried into combat. Lieutenant Colonel Henderson adjusted his formation, maintaining a safe distance while trying to process what his eyes were telling him. The unknown aircraft was an F-16C Block 50, its desert camouflage paint scheme suggesting it belonged to a training squadron. But something was wrong with the markings. The serial numbers had been painted over, and the squadron patches were missing from the tail. More disturbing was the pilot's behavior. Those figure eights were too perfect, too deliberate. This wasn't some lost weekend warrior who had wandered into restricted airspace. This was a combat veteran, someone with thousands of hours in type, executing a textbook emergency signal with mechanical precision. His radio crackled. Viper 11, Nevada Control, we're showing increased activity on your scope. What's your assessment of the unknown aircraft? Henderson watched the F-16 complete another loop, nodding the way it held altitude without deviation, the smooth coordination of control inputs that spoke of muscle memory refined through years of experience. Nevada Control, be advised the pilot appears highly experienced. This is deliberate flight behavior, not accidental airspace violation. Copy that, Viper 11. Rules of engagement remain in effect. If the aircraft fails to respond to radio contact, you are authorized to escort it to Nelly's for landing. The morning sun climbed higher, burning off the desert haze and revealing more details of the mystery aircraft. Henderson could see stress fractures in the wing root, battle damage that had been crudely repaired with mismatched aluminum patches. This fighter had seen combat, real combat, not the sterile exercises conducted over Nevada ranges. His wingman's voice cut through his analysis. Viper lead, I'm getting intermittent radar returns. Whatever that is, it's got some kind of electronic countermeasures running. Electronic warfare equipment on a civilian aircraft was impossible. ECM pods were restricted technology, available only to military units with specific operational requirements. The implications sent a chill down Henderson's spine. Either they were dealing with a stolen military aircraft, or something far more complicated was unfolding in the skies above Nevada. The F-16 banked into its next figure eight, and Henderson caught a glimpse of the pilot's helmet through the canopy. Even at this distance, something about the silhouette seemed familiar. The way the pilot held their head, the economy of movement in the cockpit, it reminded him of someone from his past, someone whose flying style had been legendary among the fighter community. But that was impossible. The pilot he was thinking of had died 15 years ago. Her F-16 shot down over the Hindu Kush Mountains during a classified mission that had never been officially acknowledged. Phoenix completed her 15th figure eight and felt the weight of decision settling over her like a shroud. The approaching F-22s maintained their distance, professional and patient, but she could see them adjusting their formation for an intercept. Soon they would demand compliance, and her options would narrow to surrender or conflict. Neither choice appealed to her. Surrender meant interrogation, debriefing, and eventually a court-martial for crimes she hadn't committed. Fighting meant turning her weapons against pilots who were only doing their job, men and women who might have trained under her guidance during her years as an instructor. She thought of the data card pressed against her ribs, its contents representing 15 years of careful investigation. Names, dates, locations, financial records, all the evidence needed to expose the shadow network that had orchestrated her downfall. The same network that had ordered the assassination of a Pakistani village elder who had witnessed American war crimes, the mission that had cost Phoenix her career, her identity, and nearly her life. The fuel gauge showed 15 minutes remaining. Not enough to reach her planned extraction point in Mexico, but sufficient to complete one final mission. The radio antenna beneath her aircraft could transmit the data directly to the journalists she'd been working with, but only if she could establish a clear line of sight to their receiving station in Las Vegas. For that, she would need to descend, breaking her current pattern and triggering an immediate response from the intercepting fighters. The risk was enormous, but the alternative was allowing the conspiracy to continue claiming lives. How many more villages would burn? How many more pilots would die carrying out illegal orders from commanders who profited from endless conflict? Phoenix rolled into a steep dive, abandoning her figure-8 pattern for the first time in 30 minutes. The F-16 responded eagerly, its General Electric engine pushing her deeper into the morning sky as she descended toward the city lights of Las Vegas. Behind her, she could hear the F-22s adjusting their intercept vector, their pilots probably assuming she was attempting to flee. In reality, she was finally coming home. After 15 years of exile, Captain Zara Thorne was ready to reclaim her identity and expose the truth, regardless of the personal cost. The Phoenix was rising from the ashes once more. Unknown aircraft, you are descending into controlled airspace. Level off immediately and respond to radio contact. The voice belonged to Viper 11, professional but carrying an edge of concern that Phoenix recognized from her own years of flying intercept missions. She almost smiled. The pilot sounded young, probably a lieutenant colonel with excellent training but limited combat experience. The kind of officer who followed procedures and trusted the system, who had never been forced to question whether his orders were legal or moral. Phoenix had been that pilot once, before Afghanistan had taught her the difference between duty and blind obedience. The city of Las Vegas spread below her like a circuit board, its neon arteries pulsing with electric life. Somewhere in that maze of lights was a small apartment where investigative journalist Michael Rodriguez waited with his equipment, ready to receive and broadcast the most explosive military scandal in decades. If Phoenix could transmit the data, if she could tell her story before the intercepting fighters forced her down, then 15 years of sacrifice would finally mean something. Her radio remained silent, but her actions spoke louder than any words. The descent continued, each 1,000 feet bringing her closer to both salvation and capture. The F-22s followed, their pilots probably running through engagement protocols while trying to understand what they were dealing with. Phoenix checked her GPS coordinates and smiled grimly. 2 minutes to transmission range. 2 minutes to vindication. Behind her, the Raptors closed the distance, their pilots preparing for whatever came next. The morning sky held its breath, waiting for the moment when the past would finally collide with the present. Henderson watched the unknown F-16 dive toward Las Vegas and felt his pulse quicken. This was no longer a simple airspace violation. The pilot was heading directly for the city, ignoring all attempts at radio contact. Standard protocol required him to assume hostile intent and take immediate action. Viper 12, close formation and prepare for engagement, he transmitted to his wingman. Unknown aircraft continues descent toward populated area. Copy Viper lead. I have tone on the target. The words hit Henderson like a physical blow. Tone meant his wingman had achieved missile lock, that the F-16 was now painted by the Raptor's fire control radar. One radio call to Nevada control, one authorization from the ground, and the mystery aircraft would become a fireball over the Nevada desert. But something held Henderson back from making that call. The figure-8 pattern had been too deliberate, too professional. The pilot's behavior suggested desperation rather than malice, and there was still that nagging sense of familiarity, the feeling that he was looking at someone from his past. Nevada Control, Viper 11. Unknown aircraft is descending toward Las Vegas, refusing to respond to radio contact. Request rules of engagement update. Viper 11. You are authorized to engage if the aircraft poses a threat to civilian population. Use your best judgment. Best judgment. Henderson had built his career on good judgment, on the ability to make life-and-death decisions in the space between heartbeats. But this situation defied every scenario he'd trained for. The F-16 wasn't maneuvering aggressively or displaying any external weapons. Its flight path, while unauthorized, wasn't directly threatening any specific target. He made his decision. Viper 12, maintain lock but hold fire. I'm going in for a closer look. Henderson pushed his throttles forward, the F-22's twin Pratt and Whitney engines responding with a surge of power that pressed him back into his ejection seat. Within seconds, he was flying formation with the unknown aircraft, close enough to see details that the long-range sensors had missed. The F-16's pilot wore a standard HGU-55P helmet, dark visor down, but Henderson could see enough of the aircraft's interior to know this was no amateur. The cockpit setup was professional, every instrument in its proper place, the pilot's body position suggesting thousands of hours of experience. More interesting were the modifications. The aircraft carried a non-standard antenna array beneath its fuselage, equipment that looked suspiciously like intelligence-gathering gear. The kind of modifications that would be made by someone with access to classified technology and the expertise to integrate it properly. Unknown pilot, this is Lieutenant Colonel Henderson, call sign Viper 11. I'm flying off your right wing. Please acknowledge this transmission and state your intentions. For a moment, Henderson thought he saw the pilot's head turn in his direction, a slight nod that might have been acknowledgement. But the radio remained silent, and the F-16 continued its descent toward the bright lights of Sin City. 3 miles above the Las Vegas Valley, Phoenix saw the F-22 Raptor slide into formation beside her and felt a mixture of professional admiration and personal regret. The pilot was skilled, maintaining perfect position despite the turbulence generated by her older aircraft. In another life, she might have been training him, teaching him the subtle art of formation flying and the psychological warfare of aerial interception. Through her peripheral vision, she could see the Raptor's pilot looking in her direction, probably trying to assess her intentions and capabilities. The irony was bitter. 15 years ago, she had flown similar intercept missions, approaching unknown aircraft with the same combination of professional caution and controlled aggression. Her GPS showed 1 minute to transmission range, 1 minute before she could download 15 years of evidence to Michael Rodriguez and his secure uplink. The data card contained proof of illegal arms sales, forged mission reports, and the systematic elimination of witnesses who had threatened to expose the conspiracy. Evidence that would destroy careers and possibly prevent a war that was being orchestrated for profit. The F-22 held formation with mechanical precision, its pilot waiting for some sign of her intentions. Phoenix almost felt sorry for him. He was about to witness the resurrection of a ghost, the return of a pilot who had supposedly died in service to her country, but had actually been betrayed by the officers she had trusted most. Her fuel gauge showed 10 minutes remaining, not enough to escape, but sufficient to complete the transmission and tell her story. The radio frequency was already set, the encryption keys loaded into her communications system. All she needed was line of sight to Rodriguez's receiving equipment, currently hidden in a downtown apartment building. Las Vegas spread below them like a neon web, its lights reflecting off the canopy of her F-16 and casting rainbow patterns across her instrument panel. Somewhere in that urban maze was the truth about Afghanistan, about the village that had been destroyed to cover up American war crimes, about the pilots who had died carrying out illegal orders. Phoenix made her final decision. Her left hand reached for the radio transmit button while her right maintained steady pressure on the stick. The moment had come to break 15 years of silence, to reclaim her identity, and accept whatever consequences followed. The transmission began with a simple phrase that would change everything. "This is Captain Zara Thorne, call sign Phoenix, serial number 94,672,851. I am alive, and I have proof." Henderson's world tilted on its axis as the voice filled his headset. Female, calm, professional, and carrying a name that belonged to a legend, a pilot whose exploits had become the stuff of Air Force mythology despite her mysterious death over Afghanistan. Captain Zara Phoenix Thorne. Henderson had heard the stories during his years at the Air Force Academy, tales of a pilot so skilled she had earned her wings ahead of schedule and her captain's bars through combat excellence. The first woman to fly combat missions in an F-16 over Afghanistan. The pilot who had saved 2 ground units during the Battle of Mazar-i-Sharif, flying through surface-to-air missile fire to deliver precision strikes that had broken a Taliban siege. The same pilot who had supposedly died when her aircraft was shot down during a classified mission 15 years ago. Her body had never been recovered, officially listed as presumed dead, in a redacted mission report that Henderson had only glimpsed during a security briefing. But the voice on the radio was very much alive, and the implications sent a chill through Henderson's professional composure. If Phoenix Thorne was alive, if she had spent 15 years in hiding, then everything about her supposed death was a lie. The question was why the Air Force would fake the death of one of its most decorated pilots. "Phoenix, this is Viper 11. Please confirm your identity and state your current status." "Viper 11, I am Captain Thorne, formerly of the 480th Fighter Squadron. I've been operating under deep cover for 15 years, investigating war crimes committed by senior officers in the Afghan theater. I have evidence of systematic corruption that reaches the highest levels of military command." Henderson's training told him to doubt everything he was hearing. Deep cover operations weren't conducted by individual pilots, and certainly not for 15 years without official support. But something in Phoenix's voice, the calm certainty of her words, suggested she was telling the truth. His wingman's voice crackled through the radio. "Viper lead, are we buying this? This could be some kind of deception operation." Before Henderson could respond, Phoenix spoke again. "Viper 12, your call sign is Stinger, isn't it? Lieutenant Colonel Patricia Walsh graduated from the academy 3 years behind me. We flew together during Red Flag 15-2. You still owe me $50 from that poker game at Nellie's." The silence that followed was profound. Henderson knew his wingman's real name, knew she had participated in Red Flag 15-2, but the poker game detail was something only someone who had been there could know. Either they were dealing with the real Phoenix Thorne, or someone with access to impossibly detailed intelligence about Air Force personnel. Below them, Las Vegas glittered in the morning sun, oblivious to the drama unfolding in the sky above. 3 F-16s and 2 F-22s, carrying pilots whose lives were about to be changed by revelations that had been hidden for 15 years. Phoenix monitored her fuel gauge, 8 minutes remaining, while watching the F-22s process her revelation. She could almost hear the wheels turning in their minds, pilots trained to think tactically struggling to understand a situation that defied all conventional logic. The truth was, She had never been officially authorized for deep cover operations. Her survival after the shootdown had been purely accidental, her investigation of the conspiracy that had tried to kill her a matter of personal vendetta rather than military duty. But those distinctions mattered less than the evidence she carried, proof of crimes that had cost hundreds of lives and millions of dollars in misdirected military spending. Phoenix, this is Viper 11. If you're really who you claim to be, then you know I need to verify your identity through official channels. I'm ordering you to follow me to Nellie's Air Force Base for immediate debriefing. Negative, Viper 11. I've spent 15 years staying alive by avoiding official channels. The conspiracy I've been investigating has assets throughout the chain of command. Landing at Nellie's would be suicide. Henderson's voice carried frustration. Then what do you propose? I can't just let you fly away after dropping a bombshell like this. Phoenix checked her GPS coordinates. 30 seconds to transmission range. 30 seconds before she could upload the evidence to Rodriguez and begin the process of exposing the truth. The data transmission would take 3 minutes, during which she would be vulnerable to interception or attack. Viper 11, I'm about to transmit classified evidence to investigative journalists. Once that transmission is complete, I'll surrender to your custody and accept whatever consequences follow. But the story needs to get out first, before anyone can cover it up or eliminate the evidence. Phoenix, I can't authorize you to transmit classified information to civilian personnel. That's treason. Marcus Henderson, right? Your father is retired Colonel James Henderson, flew F-4 Phantoms over Vietnam. He told you stories about pilots who had to make impossible choices, who had to decide between following orders and doing what was right. Henderson's sharp intake of breath was audible over the radio. Phoenix had done her research during the long years of exile, studying the backgrounds of pilots who might one day be in a position to help her. Henderson's father had been a whistleblower himself, reporting war crimes during the Vietnam conflict at considerable personal cost. The GPS coordinates aligned. Phoenix activated her transmission equipment and began uploading 15 years of carefully collected evidence to a secure server in downtown Las Vegas. The data flowed in encrypted packets, financial records, mission reports, witness testimonies, photographic evidence of atrocities committed under official orders. Above the Nevada desert, the fate of a conspiracy hung in the balance as classified information traveled through the morning air at the speed of light. Henderson watched his instruments register the electromagnetic emissions coming from Phoenix's aircraft and realized he was witnessing either the greatest intelligence breach in Air Force history or the most important whistleblowing operation since the Pentagon Papers. The pilot flying beside him was systematically transmitting classified information to unknown recipients, violating every principle of operational security he had been trained to protect. But she was also potentially exposing war crimes that had been covered up for 15 years. The moral calculus was impossible. Stop the transmission and possibly enable continued atrocities, or allow it to continue and risk compromising national security. His radio crackled with an incoming transmission from Nevada Control. Viper 11, we're detecting high-powered transmissions from the unknown aircraft. You are ordered to terminate those transmissions immediately, using any means necessary. Any means necessary. Military euphemism for weapons authorization. Henderson was being ordered to shoot down Phoenix Thorne and whatever evidence she carried, to silence her before she could reveal whatever truths she had discovered during her years in the shadows. The weight of decision pressed down on him like G-forces in a high-speed turn. Phoenix's transmission continued, data streaming from her aircraft to unknown recipients in the city below. His wingman maintained missile lock, waiting for orders that would either preserve military secrets or prevent their exposure. Viper 12, stand by, Henderson transmitted, buying time to think through options that seemed to narrow with every passing second. Phoenix's voice filled his headset again. "Marcus, your father faced a similar choice in 1971. He could have remained silent about the massacre at My Lai and preserved his career, or he could have spoken up and accepted the consequences. He chose truth over convenience, justice over personal safety. That choice cost him promotions and respect from his peers, but it saved lives." Henderson knew the story. His father had indeed reported war crimes during Vietnam, enduring years of professional ostracism before history vindicated his decision. The parallel to the current situation was impossible to ignore, but the stakes seemed even higher. Phoenix claimed to have evidence of ongoing crimes, of a conspiracy that continued to operate within the highest levels of military command. "Phoenix, I need more than allegations. Give me something concrete, something that proves you're telling the truth." Operation Sandstorm, February 2010. A village called Kala-i-Jangi was destroyed by American airstrikes after its elder witnessed the execution of prisoners by a special operations team. The mission was classified as targeting Taliban leadership, but the village had no strategic value. 43 civilians died to silence one witness. Henderson's blood ran cold. He had heard rumors of Operation Sandstorm during his years as a junior officer, whispered stories of a mission that had gone wrong in Afghanistan. But the official records had been sealed, classified at levels that prevented even senior officers from accessing the details. The transmission continued, evidence flowing from Phoenix's aircraft like digital blood from a mortal wound in the conspiracy's operational security. Lieutenant Colonel Patricia Stinger Walsh listened to the exchange between her flight leader and the mysterious pilot claiming to be Phoenix Thorne, and felt the foundations of her worldview shifting beneath her. 22 years of military service had been built on the assumption that the chain of command was legitimate, that orders came from officers who served the national interest rather than personal profit. But the details Phoenix was revealing, specific operations, dates, classified code names, suggested access to information that only someone with the highest security clearances could possess. Either they were dealing with a sophisticated enemy agent, or the Air Force's most legendary female pilot had indeed spent 15 years investigating crimes committed by her own service. "Stinger, do you remember the poker game Phoenix mentioned?" Henderson's voice carried strain, a pilot struggling with decisions that no training had prepared him for. Walsh did remember. Red Flag 15-2, a massive training exercise conducted over the Nevada ranges. Phoenix Thorne had been an instructor then, teaching advanced air-to-air tactics to the next generation of fighter pilots. She had cleaned out most of the squadron during a poker game at the Nelly's Officers Club, her calm confidence translating from the cockpit to the card table with equal effectiveness. The detail was too specific, too personal to be fabricated. Walsh was looking at a ghost, a pilot who had supposedly died 15 years ago but who was very much alive and carrying secrets that could reshape American military policy. "I remember," Walsh transmitted. "Phoenix, if you're really Zara Thorne, then you know what happened during our final sortie of that exercise. You know why I earned my call sign." A pause, then Phoenix's voice returned with a trace of warmth. "You went after 3 F-15s with a damaged radar and low fuel, using nothing but visual navigation and pure aggression. Your instructor said you flew like an angry wasp, all sting and no quit. Hence Stinger." The memory was exact, down to the instructor's exact words. Walsh felt her doubts evaporating, replaced by a growing sense that she was witnessing something historic. Phoenix Thorne was alive, and she was about to expose secrets that had been buried in classified files for over a decade. "Phoenix, what do you need from us?" Walsh asked, her finger moving away from the missile trigger for the first time since achieving lock. "I need 3 more minutes to complete the data transmission. Then I need an escort to Creech Air Force Base." There's someone there I trust, someone who can protect me during the inevitable investigation. Nevada Control's voice crackled through the radio with increasing urgency. Viper Flight, you are ordered to terminate the unauthorized transmission immediately. Use of force is authorized. Henderson and Walsh exchanged glances across the sky, two pilots facing a decision that would define their careers and possibly their lives. Below them, Phoenix continued her transmission, uploading evidence of crimes that reached into the highest levels of military command. The morning sun climbed higher, burning away the last wisps of desert haze and revealing the stark clarity of their situation. In the distance, Las Vegas glittered like a jewel against the brown landscape, oblivious to the drama unfolding in the sky above. Three pilots hung suspended between loyalty and justice, between duty and truth, while classified information flowed through the air at the speed of light. The transmission counter on Phoenix's dashboard showed 2 minutes remaining. Phoenix watched her data transmission progress while monitoring the radio chatter between the intercepting F-22s and their ground control. The strain in Henderson's voice was palpable, a career officer struggling with orders that conflicted with his moral compass. She had been in similar situations during her years in Afghanistan, forced to choose between official duty and ethical responsibility. The irony wasn't lost on her. 15 years ago, she had been the one following orders without question, trusting that her chain of command had access to intelligence that justified every mission. It had taken the revelation of systematic war crimes to shatter that trust, to force her into the shadows where she had spent years collecting evidence of the conspiracy that had tried to silence her. Her fuel gauge showed 5 minutes remaining. 5 minutes to complete the transmission, surrender to military custody, and hope that the evidence she had gathered would be enough to bring justice to the victims of Operation Sandstorm and dozens of similar cover-ups. The data card pressed against her ribs contained more than classified documents. It held the testimonies of survivors, photographs of destroyed villages, and financial records that traced the flow of illegal arms sales back to officers who had profited from endless conflict. Phoenix, this is Nevada Control. You are ordered to terminate your transmission and follow the intercepting aircraft to Nellis Air Force Base for immediate debriefing. Failure to comply will result in the use of force. She almost laughed at the bureaucratic language. Use of force. Military euphemism for shooting her out of the sky, for silencing her the same way they had tried to silence the village elder in Kala-i-Jangi. But this time, the evidence would survive even if she didn't. Rodriguez's secure server was located in a building owned by an investigative journalism foundation, protected by legal safeguards that would make its contents public regardless of what happened to the pilot who had provided them. Her radio crackled with Henderson's voice. Phoenix, I need you to understand the position you're putting us in. I have direct orders to stop your transmission, but everything you've told us suggests you're trying to expose legitimate crimes. Help me understand what you need to complete your mission. The question revealed Henderson's character, the mark of an officer who thought beyond simple obedience to consider the broader implications of his actions. Phoenix had trained dozens of pilots like him during her years as an instructor, men and women who combined tactical excellence with ethical reasoning. The Air Force was supposed to develop such officers, though the system sometimes failed spectacularly. Marcus, I need 60 more seconds to upload the final data package. After that, I'll power down my transmission equipment and follow you wherever you want to take me. But those 60 seconds are worth 15 years of investigation and possibly hundreds of lives. The transmission counter showed 90 seconds remaining, longer than she had estimated but still within the margin of safety her fuel would allow. Below, Las Vegas sprawled in the morning light, its neon arteries carrying the lifeblood of American entertainment, while classified secrets flowed through the air above. Henderson made his decision with the same calculated precision that had carried him through 2 decades of military flying. The evidence Phoenix was transmitting might expose legitimate crimes, or it might compromise national security in ways he couldn't foresee. But the pilot beside him had risked everything to reach this moment, had spent 15 years in exile to collect proof of atrocities that would otherwise remain hidden. Nevada Control, Viper 11. I'm experiencing intermittent radar contact with the unknown aircraft. Request clarification of rules of engagement before proceeding. It was a lie, but a lie that bought precious time. Henderson's radar was functioning perfectly, painting Phoenix's F-16 with crystalline clarity. But radio protocol required ground control to verify his technical status before authorizing weapons use, a bureaucratic delay that might provide the seconds Phoenix needed to complete her mission. Viper 11, state the nature of your technical difficulties. Intermittent lock-on capability, possible interference from unknown electronic countermeasures. Recommend I close distance for visual identification before engaging. Another lie, but one that sounded plausible given the unusual electronics package visible beneath Phoenix's aircraft. Henderson was buying time with technical language, using the system's own procedures to protect the pilot they were supposed to neutralize. His wingman's voice carried confusion. Viper lead, my systems are nominal. I maintain solid lock on the target. Stinger, hold position and stand by. Let me work through these technical issues. Phoenix's transmission counter showed 30 seconds remaining. 30 seconds before 15 years of evidence would be safely beyond the reach of the conspiracy that had tried to kill her. Henderson held formation beside her aircraft, close enough to see her helmet turn in his direction with what might have been a nod of gratitude. Below them, the city of Las Vegas pulsed with life, its citizens unaware that the most significant intelligence operation in decades was reaching its climax in the sky above their heads. In apartments and office buildings, people went about their morning routines while classified documents flowed through the air at light speed, carrying the power to topple governments and prevent wars. The transmission counter reached 0. Phoenix's mission was complete. Nevada Control, this is Phoenix. Data transmission terminated. I am powering down all electronic countermeasures and preparing to surrender to military custody. I request escort to Creech Air Force Base, where I will submit to debriefing by appropriate authorities. The radio fell silent for several seconds, ground controllers probably conferring with senior officers about how to handle a situation that had no precedent in military procedure. Phoenix Thorne was officially dead, her service record classified at levels that prevented routine access. Her reappearance created legal and operational complications that would require decisions from the highest levels of command. Henderson watched Phoenix's aircraft as she systematically shut down her transmission equipment, the electromagnetic signatures on his instruments fading to background levels. Whatever data she had been sending was now beyond recall, uploaded to servers that existed outside military control. The genie was out of the bottle, and no amount of force could put it back. All units, Nevada Control. Escort the unknown aircraft to Nelly's Air Force Base for immediate debriefing. Rules of engagement remain in effect, but priority is to bring the pilot in for questioning. Henderson noted the change in terminology. Unknown aircraft instead of hostile target. The bureaucracy was already adapting to the new reality, preparing for the possibility that Phoenix's allegations might prove true. Military lawyers would be scrambling to review 15-year-old classified files, while public affairs officers prepared for the media storm that would follow any leak of the transmitted documents. Phoenix, this is Viper 11. We'll escort you to Nelly's for debriefing. I want your word that you won't attempt to evade or resist. You have my word, Marcus. I've been running for 15 years, but I'm tired of hiding. It's time to face whatever comes next. The small formation of aircraft turned toward Nelly's Air Force Base, their contrails writing the end of one chapter and the beginning of another across the Nevada sky.